You are welcome to today's episode of Chronicles of a Nigerian Woman. I am Fagbeja, your host, and today I'll be reading Amara's story. I often hear about stories of men abusing their wives, and I know it is quite common, but I am ashamed to say that the reverse was the case in my situation. I took my husband through hell, and I am surprised that he even stayed with me. I grew up with my parents and two sisters, and I was the middle child. My dad was seldom around since work took him all around the country. My mom was a strong and assertive woman and raised us to be the same. My dad was more laid back and relaxed and mostly left matters to my mom to handle in her own way. Among my sisters, I was the most feisty. I was outspoken and blunt and did not care whose ox was God. My tongue was sharp and scathing. Mike was easygoing and unassuming, and we met at a mutual friend's party. I was 28 at the time, and he was just a year older. He had just returned from the UK, and our friend had invited him for the party so that he could mingle since he was new in town. I was in my usual element as the life of the party, and he obviously found me very amusing. He asked our friend for my number a couple of days later, and she gave it to him after confirming with me. So, we started dating, and we were in the relationship for just over a year before we got married. Mike was such a great person, and he really loved me, but I used his feelings to my advantage. I flared up at him for simple things, threw massive tantrums, and even broke stuff around the house, especially in the early days. I remember one evening, Mike called to let me know that he would be home a bit late because they were working on a tight deadline for a client. It was almost 11 when he finally arrived. He had called me around 7, and I kept calling him every 30 minutes until he pleaded with me to take it easy because I was distracting him and embarrassing him too. But I did not stop calling, and he stopped taking my calls around 9. When he arrived, I locked him out of the house for over an hour while he pleaded with me to let him in. When I eventually did, I gave him the full thrust of my tongue. He slept in the living room that night, and he still had to leave early for work the next morning. Mike endured my abuse for 5 years, and then one day, after I lashed out, I drove out, and when I got back, he had left. He had taken 2 suitcases of his clothes. The maid said he didn't say anything. He just packed his stuff into his car and he left. It was a Saturday morning, and I called his phone throughout that day and the next. It rang, but he did not pick the calls. I sent him several WhatsApp messages, but he must have switched off his data or blocked me because they were not delivered. By Sunday evening, I was almost out of my mind. I called his parents to let them know that I could not find him. They asked what happened, and I had to tell them with my own mouth what I had done. I called his office on Monday and on Tuesday, but he hadn't shown up, and no one could reach him either. And then on Wednesday, he finally picked up his dad's call and told them that he was fine, but he had to leave for his sanity. With their intervention, he agreed to return for a family meeting. Mike had never mentioned my behavior, or rather my misbehavior, to anyone, and this was the first time anybody was getting to know of how I had treated him over the years. I was ashamed, to say the least. He said he would no longer stay in the marriage if I did not agree to get help. At first, I tried to grandstand my way through, but in his quiet way, Mike insisted, and I knew he was serious. and that was the beginning of my turnaround. I went for therapy, and we both went for counseling sessions, and I learned to manage my temper. I knew my husband was a good man, and I honestly did not want to lose him. He has been gracious to me. He has never mentioned my misbehavior, and he doesn't hold it over my head. And our marriage has been so much better in the last 3 years. I know that another man would have left without looking back, and I really appreciate Mike for sticking with me and helping me become a better person. Please share your thoughts about Amara and Mike in the comment section below. Remember to hit the subscribe button and to turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of my videos.